Life moves pretty fast. That mobile phone you bought last month is now a worthless fossil. All your new dance moves are lame. And if you take one more sick day from work, you're going to be replaced by a robot. And then there's the miniature sculptures on Fiverr that produce decent miniatures in a week. That's way faster than my one model every couple of months I seem to be managing at the moment. And that got me thinking, I wonder if there was a couple of things I could do to make my model making quicker. What if there was some design choices I could do or make to move things along and speed up the pace a bit? So I fired up my patented ideas wall and got to thinking. I wanted to make something fast, dumb, and most importantly fun. And that got me to thinking about some of the villains from the old 90s cartoons. Big, bright, colourful monsters so outrageous they would make Todd McFarlane blush. One of my particular favourites was Krang. I like the idea of a little brain driving around a big machine. It's quite a baller move, really. So in the end, my main points were I wanted to make a big chunky boy with lots of fun chunky details like a 90s kids toy. And most importantly, it had to be fun to paint. First thing I did was create this head with this brain exposed as a little nod to Krang. It was kind of gory and outrageous, which is what I was going for with this sculpt. Then I thought, why stop at the brain? Maybe you should have his heart exposed as well, like some guy that's got super into trepanning and now just has to have all his vital bodily organs exposed to the elements to feel the tingle on them. Then I added some speakers behind his head to blast music directly into his brain. And I wanted to give him a kind of a skin cloak. And I thought it would be cool to put hands at the end of it to signify that, as well as faces and things on the model. As much as I'd like the original head, I was a bit worried that it wouldn't print very well. And I wanted something chunky to fit the model. So in the end, I came up with this big, beefy, sort of Bane-style mask and sculpted him with his eyes kind of pinned open. I think this nice chunky look goes well with what I was going for, like he's a Captain Planet villain or something like that. After a bit more sculpting, I had something that looked a bit like this. I'd played pretty fast and loose with the dimensions of this model. The legs are a bit chunky and the waist is a bit skinny. But, you know, like I say, this was supposed to be quick, fun, fast, so it doesn't matter to me too much if he has slightly cartoonish proportions. In the end, I had something that looked a bit like this. Gave him the outstretched arm with the plasma pistol, the classic piece of strategic scenery to change his pose up, and went with a nice big chunky cape all covered into skin with stapled together. I printed it in a slightly bigger scale because, like I say, painting this, having a fun paint, is going to be the most important piece with this model. And it is a great model if you want to practice painting, things like that. It's for sale on Cults 3D, so go check it out. Unfortunately, my painting is not that good, but thankfully I host a podcast with a couple of people whose painting is tip-top, so I handed it over to them to see what they could accomplish with it.
Greetings, fellow Warhammer dweeb. Welshy here from the Large Blast podcast, and I have an exciting present that's been delivered on my desk. It's come with this little card that says, "Dear precious slave, I wanted to leave you a gift to make up for ignoring our safe word last week. Sometimes the lust just gets too much. I hope your nostrils recover soon. Your ever faithless master." Oh wow! It's only Stoney's new Slanesh Lord model. First thing I do after I've sprayed lead belcher with any model, I'm going to use a lot of contrast on, hit it with a dry brush of Necron compound. This will really brighten up the edges and make them shine through. A lot more contrast on the model than if you didn't do it and you just put it straight onto the lead belcher. I got this recently from Artist Opus. These large brushes are really, really good. Something about the dry brush just being round gives it a really soft feel and means you can really catch the edges much nicer than other brushes.
When dry brushing, make sure you pay more attention to the top parts of the model where the light would hit most. I love contrast for projects like this. It's so easy to apply and push into the cracks and corners. With contrast, always work on the deepest areas of the model first and come back out towards the surface. I really do miss these old glaze paints, they were great. Take care with the Nasdrag on this trim, try not to spill any on the purple, it'll be difficult to recover. So that's the two main colours for the base layer done. I love this point of a model as you can really see it coming together. That's before you have to get to the really detailed, picky bits. This guy may hail Slaanesh, but I hail the god of washes. They really are excellent for pulling out the details, especially on bits of armour trim like this. If you haven't got yourself a wet palette yet, don't bother spending any money. All you need to do is grab yourself an old cellulose sponge, some greaseproof paper and a Tupperware. Keep it damp but not too wet, and it'll keep your paint flowing forever. The wet palette's especially useful when using lighter colours, as I find they tend to be a little bit thicker naturally out the pot, thanks to the chemicals needed to make up their colour composition. The next few steps I haven't recorded, but I needed to pick out some of the other details in the model, so I used Abaddon Black as a base coat for the loincloth. Black Templar contrast to fill in the gaps between the armour. This is really good because it runs into the cracks nicely. And Celestial Grey, my favourite base coat if you're going for light whiter colours, both on the plasma and the brain. When working with contrast like Dark Oath Flesh, I often like to thin them down, but never use water as this will break up the contrast properties. Always make sure you split at least 50-50 with contrast medium. I use these nice little contact lens pots, thanks to my girlfriend being basically blind. This Green Stuff World colour shift is for the loincloth. It sits really nicely on top of that black, but you have to build it up in lots of really thin layers to get the desired effect, and that sheen from one colour to the next. Back to the washes, this time Agrax Earthshade, which I prefer to non-oil as it gives more colour and depth to the silvery sections of a model. So that's the basic sections of the model done. I'm really happy with the loincloth and also the flesh on the cape. Hopefully you can see that adding those little bits of colour as the Dark Oath dries really makes it kind of have a bruised and old-aged appeal. Now it's time for the final highlights and the basing, and to see how that's done, check out my other video. So here it is, the finished product. I've really enjoyed painting this model and absolutely love the way Stoney's design and sculpt allows you to have space to work on smooth flat areas, but also enough details to really bring the model to life. I especially love the open heart. You can really get a sense of Slaanesh beating through it. The belt buckle jumps out as a kind of focal point of the model, and then you have the creepy ass face, the peeled back skin, and the nail eyes. The silhouette of the sword also really stands out as a feature of this model, as do the parts of the backpack, the skulls on the stalks, really tying it into the old school kind of original Noise Marine models. The speakers behind the brain really scream Celeste to me, as if this Chaos Lord is just pummeling music directly into his brain cells, and that his skin and his skull and his ears were all in the way, preventing it from really entering his psyche. When you move to the back of the model, it gets even more grimdark, and the Book of the Dead screaming from the cape really kind of resonates with whatever he's listening to on the speakers. I reckon it probably acts in the same way. Also, the hands on the final pieces is a real original touch that I haven't seen on any model like this before. Eat your hearts out, Night Lords. So the last thing to do with this model is add it to my Emperor's Children army. The look I've been going for from the start of this army was a kind of mixture of the Age of Sigmar and the 40k feel, really adding a demonic and magical texture, which I feel this model has allowed me to achieve. I think it sits really well with the whole force, and I can't wait for him to lead them into battle.
Well, expose my organs and get Slaanesh on the phone, because Welshy did a bang-up job on that. But let's see how our friend Matt got on.
Okay, so I started off by basing the model using my airbrush with black and then grey and then white from the top in a zenithal highlight. And then I've come in and I've just put none oil in all the edges just to increase the contrast. And now I'm using my special skin colour mix, which is a secret recipe, and then apply that everywhere. So that's just a normal Citadel paint over all the skin, so the figure's skin, the skin around the body that forms some of the clothes that he's wearing. Put that everywhere, let that dry, and then I can put my secret recipe wash over the top. So I went for the Flawless Coast. I just thought it was a nice contrast between two different shades of purple and pinks, and I've always liked light colour pinks, but too much of it and I think the model looks a bit weird, so this is kind of a mix of the two. First of all, I go in with the silver and I paint everything that I want to be gold. So I've left the coils of the plasma gun in white, and now I'm going in and just through different shades of blue, just a very thin blue. I'm clipping the ends of the coils, and then I come in with this pink again. It's very dilute, and I just go into all the panel lines on the light pink. So everywhere that I've painted the silver, I'm going over with a dark yellow and the snakebite leather contrast paints, mixing the two while they're wet, so just catching the yellow on the edges and mixing it with the snakebite. That's given me a non-metallic gold all over straight away. And then once that's dry, I start to do the edge highlight. So I've got two shades, a medium and then a high tone, just to come in and clip all the edges and start to add very, very small bits of battle damage. I didn't really want to add loads of battle damage because being an Emperor's children, as well, obviously he's a follower of Chaos now, perfection is very important to them, so I assume that they wouldn't have really beat up armour. Both tones, I'm coming in and clipping like the points of the armour almost with a white, and that just makes the armour look shiny. I think at this point I'm coming in with a fine brush and black, and I'm just adding in that battle damage, so just a couple of lines here and there. As I say, very, very few, sparse. Try and get some of the edges and some of the larger areas of armour where something might have scratched them. And now I'm just going in with greys, different tones of greys, and trying to, it's almost like paint scratching on, so it's just loads of scratches trying to do some silver non-metallic metal. So I decided that I would use the higher scale of the model just to come in and attempt to do some non-metallic silver everywhere. I have no idea what I'm doing at this point, but I'm just kind of going with the flow, and I always tap stuff with my finger. I just find I like the texture of the finger, and you can kind of, if you do a mistake, tap it with your finger and it solves the problem. Although, I should see in a moment, there's a drawback to that. At this point I'm using the same blue, and it's more dilute, but I'm going in and just clipping where the plasma coils would have lit up the surrounding area on the gun. Just thinking where the light might go, and various different darknesses and tone of the blues, just trying to clip different areas. Adding in a wash on, I painted these things, they're like staples. I imagine them to be like bone staples holding the skin together, so I've just washed those a bit. Now I'm adding null oil back into the silver areas, so everything that I'm painting is non-metallic silver. I'm trying to add contrast everywhere, and there we go, I broke the model. But just carried on and glued it back on super glue once I'd finished that step. Now I've got a very, very dilute white, and I'm letting it drip and go into the recesses of the plasma gun. At this point I'm just going in with different colours. Here I'm adding in a wash on the join between the skin and the brain, just to define that join again. I'm adding in blacks and greys into all of the greaves and all of the kind of rubberized material. So now I'm edge highlighting the gold. So I had the contrast non-metallic gold pretty easy with the contrast paints, but I had decided, as I had the scratches on the silver, that I wanted to work into that non-metallic gold. So I'm just adding very light browns and yellows to edge highlight and clip, and as I go I'm kind of adding scratches in. It kind of makes it look shiny, sort of. I mean, again, I haven't really perfected this, but it's good to practice, and it's a very good model to practice on. Adding in some washes on the skin, and again I'm just tapping it with my fingers just to get a bit of texture. I didn't break it this time though. Now I'm adding in, using some blood for the blood god, I'm adding in some bits on the brain, diluted down just with some water. I think I left the eyes to the last moment because I couldn't think of what to paint them. But if you look at the artwork, the Emperor's children kind of have black, like dead, kind of nothing, like black pearls, black pearl eyes. So I just went with that. And once it's all dried, I varnished it, and then I've come in with some pin washes, using some oil washes, some dust on his feet just to tie in with the base, and some browns, Van Dyke brown, just to go into all of the gold. It's oil washes, so the capillary reaction will pool into the corners and the crevices. And then the dust oil wash, I'm just taking off some with methylated spirits.
So there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. Matt's awesome painting of my big dumb model. If you like this model and have a printer, make sure you get over to Colts 3D and pick it up there. I've been Stoney. Until next time. Bye-bye.